Hi, I'm Daniel, founder of Pretty Litter. Did you know cats tend to hide symptoms of sickness and pain? I learned this the hard way after losing my cat, Gingy. So I created Pretty Litter, a health monitoring litter that helps detect early signs of illness by changing colors, saving you money and potentially your cat's life. Pretty Litter is veterinarian developed, and it's the easiest way to keep tabs on your fur baby's health right at home.
Go to prettylitter.com and use code ACAST for 20% off your first order and a free cat toy. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details.
It's Saturday the 13th of July. I'm Ciara Evans, and this was a week that saw Sir Keir Starmer settle into Downing Street, NATO leaders meet in Washington, France swing dramatically left, and England head for Euro history.
Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news.
It's been a busy week for the UK's new government, and Sir Keir Starmer certainly didn't hang around when it came to his new job as Prime Minister. Friday, Saturday and Sunday saw a whirlwind of activity from the new PM, with a full list of cabinet appointees, including a couple of surprises. He called up Sir Patrick Vallance as Science Minister and prison reform campaigner James Timpson as Prisons Minister, while the role of Attorney General will be taken up by Senior King's Counsel Richard Hermer. It's part of an approach described as government of all the talents. He got things underway with a first cabinet meeting on Saturday.
It was the honour and privilege of my life to be invited by the King to form the Labour government of 2024. So we have a huge amount of work to do, so now we get on with our work.
He's also set up a number of task forces to deliver on the key missions. He toured the 4 nations on Sunday, and he's set to meet the metro mayors on Monday before heading to the US for the NATO summit. He spent time on the phone too, speaking to world leaders, including US President Biden.
Mr. Prime Minister, congratulations. What a hell of a victory. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's been a long night and day. Thank you very much for your congratulations.
There was no doubt of your leadership. Our two countries are going to continue our special relationship.
Labour spent the week making every effort to take advantage of early momentum, and its new ministers and secretaries of state have been hard at work laying out their plans and following up on their manifesto pledges. Chancellor Rachel Reeves delivered her first major speech on Monday and said that economic stability is critical if the Labour government is to deliver on its promises to keep taxes, inflation and mortgage rates as low as possible. She also recognised that the public finances are in the worst shape they've been since the end of World War II.
The manifesto commitments that we were elected on will be kept to and they will be delivered on. I know that many of you aren't used to hearing this after recent years, but I believe that the promises that a party is elected on should be delivered on in government, and we will do so.
New Home Secretary Yvette Cooper was focused on immigration as she announced the creation of a new Border Security Command intended to accelerate work on breaking up the criminal gangs trafficking people in small boats. The Rwanda scheme has been binned, and she wouldn't be drawn on whether or not facilities like the BB Stockholm barge would remain in operation.
Well, we need to clear the Conservatives' asylum backlog, but the first priority has to be to get their stronger border security in place, and that's why our first step is setting up the new Border Security Command. Monday saw Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer on a whirlwind tour of the home nations to establish an early spirit of cooperation that was definitely lacking under the previous Tory regime. Monday saw him in Northern Ireland, where he met with Stormont leaders after a historic election result that saw Sinn Féin become the largest Northern Ireland party in Westminster, along with Stormont and the local councils. Sinn Féin President Mary Lou MacDonald, who met Starmer alongside First Minister Michelle O'Neill, said they discussed change and the future of the North.
We wish to see a new Ireland in which every person has a stake, and we are very, very conscious that we have an obligation to work constructively and in partnership for everybody, but we also know that the British government has an obligation to act with rigorous impartiality.
Before he headed to Belfast, he visited Scotland and impressed the Scottish Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes, who says that things appear to be on a much more constructive footing.
It was a very positive meeting, and there's a palpable change that we might see a new collaborative relationship form. We've been in government through the Gordon Brown administration into David Cameron, and we've seen what a good relationship looks like.
Tuesday saw the new Parliament sit for the first time, with 650 members of Parliament arriving, over half of whom are brand new. Prime Minister Starmer welcomed the new arrivals and held the most diverse Parliament in history, including the largest cohort of LGBT plus MPs. He also paid tribute to Diane Abbott, who is now the Mother of the House, a title given to the longest serving female MP. Starmer welcomed what he hoped was a new kind of politics.
We have the opportunity and the responsibility to put an end to a politics that has too often seemed self-serving and self-obsessed, and to replace that politics of performance with the politics of service.
Labour ministers were busy ticking through their to-do lists as new Health Secretary Wes Streeting had a positive meeting with the junior doctors, which saw the BMA hopeful that they can resolve their issues without further strikes. Meanwhile, former PM and former Tory leader who had to stay in the role, Rishi Sunak, was on the unfamiliar side of the House as he led his much smaller Tory party to their seats on the opposition benches.
Let me begin with a message to those who are no longer sitting behind me. I am sorry. It is important that after 14 years in government, the Conservative Party rebuilds. So now we will take up the crucial role of His Majesty's official opposition, professionally, effectively and humbly.
The NATO summit in Washington was new Prime Minister Keir Starmer's first foreign trip as leader, and it appears to have gone well. He's been focused on resetting the UK's relationships with key partners along with shoring up support for Ukraine, and he scored a significant victory as the NATO alliance has adopted his plans that Ukraine's entry to NATO should be considered irreversible. He's committed to increasing the UK's defence budget to match the new challenges, but he still wouldn't be drawn on when exactly the defence budget would increase to 2.5%.
I think what would be unserious would be to simply pick an arbitrary date, because that's what the last government did. So what I want to do is make the commitment, be absolutely clear how we reach that commitment, and that it's within our fiscal rules.
With the spotlight firmly on the new occupant of Downing Street, the nation found itself without a formal organised opposition party. After the election last Friday, as well as stepping down as Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak quit as the leader of the Tory party, but it wasn't clear who might replace him, with Jeremy Hunt ruling himself out. The Conservative Party board met on Monday to draw up a timeline for a leadership contest, and former Chancellor Nadeem Zahawi said that the party's still in shock after Friday's results.
It is pretty catastrophic to go from 365 MPs down to 121 is pretty shocking. But I do think that we have an opportunity to regroup.
Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey had a much better election day as his party won 72 seats, a massive jump from the 11 they had in the previous parliament. It was a triumph for tactical voting and extreme sports as Davey challenged the normal rules of campaigning, and he's looking forward to having a louder voice in the Commons.
Well, we're going to be constructive opposition. We fought the election on health and care and the costs of living, on ending the sewage scandal. In the Parliament, we will focus on those issues and we will urge the government to go further.
Rishi Sunak had to step back into the Tory leadership role temporarily, and he appointed a shadow cabinet with many familiar names. But last week's election results, which saw many serious Tory heavyweights lose their seats, has thrown the party into chaos, and former Home Secretary Suella Braverman isn't hanging around when it comes to the race for the leadership. She's been pushing hard to get her name on the shortlist and addressed a Washington-based National Conservatism conference in Washington on Tuesday by Zoom. She sounded pretty regretful that not much of her to-do list got done.
We were going to use our Brexit freedoms to stop the waves of illegal migrants. We were going to stop the lunatic woke virus working its way through the British state.
This week saw the NATO summit in Washington as new UK PM Keir Starmer made his first international trip with a focus on affirming the UK's support for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Monday saw a fresh wave of Russian missile attacks on cities across Ukraine. A Russian cruise missile hit a children's hospital in Kyiv, killing at least 2 people and starting a fire which destroyed about 60% of the hospital. There were fears that more people may be trapped under the rubble, and the death toll from the latest attacks stands at more than 40 people. Former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko said NATO allies cannot trust anything President Putin says.
Any attempt to delay the launching of negotiation with Ukraine is very dangerous for the global security. My point of view is that we can learn the lessons from that.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer met with Ukrainian President Zelensky on Wednesday and assured him that the UK will continue to support Ukraine as they battle to push back Russian forces, and he also agreed to allow the UK's Storm Shadows cruise missiles to be used for targets in Russia. Meanwhile, with the NATO summit underway, there was a new focus on defence spending as the new Defence Secretary John Healey declared that the UK will be the leading European nation in NATO under the Labour government. The summit was opened by US President Joe Biden, who made a crisp and to-the-point speech reaffirming the organisation's support for Ukraine and reeling off a list of new weapons and support. Crucially, there'll be a big increase in the number of air defence systems to protect cities across Ukraine as Russia continues its missile attacks on civilian targets.
The United States will make sure that when we export critical air defence interceptors, Ukraine goes to the front of the line. But we'll get this assistance before anyone else gets it. All told, Ukraine will receive hundreds of additional interceptors over the next year.
The White House also announced that the first F-16 fighter jets will arrive in Ukraine this summer, donated via the Dutch and Danish governments. It's expected about 85 of the jets will take flight, and the hope is that they will have a significant impact on the course of Russia's invasion. Outgoing NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says that the alliance has to focus on winning the war and that Ukraine is on an irreversible path to joining the alliance.
There are no risk-free options in a war. And remember, the biggest cost and the greatest risk will be if Russia wins in Ukraine. We cannot let that happen.
The NATO summit wrapped up on Thursday with Ukraine a major focus of the discussions and with some promising developments for the embattled country. The alliance also expressed concern at the support Russia is getting from China and North Korea while meeting with NATO's Asia-Pacific partners. The Ukraine crisis overshadowed the ongoing war in Gaza, where the Israeli military has been warning civilians to evacuate Gaza City as a new offence looks set to begin. The EU's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell says things are not improving as the war rages on.
9 months after the terrorist attack by Hamas, the humanitarian situation in the ground is much worse, unbearable. In the West Bank, the Israeli government is seizing land.
This week saw no let-up in the aftermath of US President Joe Biden's poor debate performance, and the hysteria from Democrats doesn't seem to be abating. He did a sit-down interview with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos last Friday, and while he performed well, the question of whether or not he's too old to run doesn't seem to be going away. Meanwhile, his opponent, Donald Trump, was busy denying any involvement in Project 2025, which is essentially a Republican plan to tear up democracy. Longtime Democrat Senator Bernie Sanders says he backs Biden and that the polls are turning in Joe's favour.
What we are talking about now is not a Grammy Award contest for Best Singer. Biden is old. I wish he could jump up the steps on Air Force One. He can't. What we have got to focus on is policy. Whose policies have and will benefit the vast majority of the people in this country.
Wednesday saw George Clooney speak out in a New York Times opinion piece where he said that the Joe Biden of 2024 is not the same as the Joe of 2010 or even 2020, and that the time has come for him to step aside. Those sentiments are increasingly being echoed by senior Democrats, including Senator Blumenthal, who is supporting Biden but urging him to make a decision.
I am deeply concerned about Joe Biden winning this November. It is an existential threat to the country if Donald Trump wins. So we have to reach a conclusion as soon as possible.
The Democrats appear to be engaged in a new civil war now over whether or not Joe should continue to run for president, with a new Pew poll giving Donald Trump a 4-point lead amongst registered voters. It's understood that Democrats have been testing Vice President Kamala Harris's appeal with potential voters, but Joe seems determined to battle on. He held an hour-long press conference on Thursday at the end of the NATO summit, which he began by accidentally referring to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. He remained focused and determined throughout the conference, but it may not be enough, as a clip from the NATO event in which he was introducing President Zelensky has gone viral.
And now I want to hand it over to the President of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky.
Still to come in the Standout 7, France takes a swing to the left and England prepare for a Spanish showdown in Berlin.
Right after this. Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome back. 3,
Last Sunday saw the second round of voting in the French general election. The first round has seen Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally party scoop over a third of the votes, and that was followed by frantic manoeuvring by all sides to maximise each party's seats in Parliament. Turnout was high at 67%, and there was a dramatic shift as the Green and left-wing New Popular Front won 182 seats in the 577-seat Parliament. President Emmanuel Macron's centrist alliance won 168 seats, and the RN won 143, which may lead to a hung Parliament and months of wrangling. Current French Prime Minister and Macron ally Gabriel Attal offered his resignation after the vote. Meanwhile, the man who would have been the National Rally's PM, Jordan Bardella, was sounding bitter in defeat.
The alliance of dishonour and the dangerous electoral arrangements between Emmanuel Macron, Gabriel Attal and the far left have deprived the French from a recovery policy.
In a twist, French President Emmanuel Macron took the unusual step on Monday of refusing to accept the resignation of the French Prime Minister. Attal, who is also the head of the Ensemble Alliance, had offered his resignation after a campaign that saw Macron's party finish behind the New Popular Front group, but ahead of Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally. However, with Macron due to fly to the NATO summit on Tuesday and the Olympics due to start in Paris in under 3 weeks, the president wanted to avoid any chaos or disruption. Negotiations to form a coalition may take months to resolve, but candidate for the New Popular Front, Charlotte Minivat, says Macron needs to listen to the voices from the left and Green Alliance.
I think the fact that we came in the lead means that it's going to be for them to consider whether they're willing to be able to support policies that are more to the left, which is not what they have done for the past 7 years that they've been in government.
Wednesday saw England face off against the Dutch in their Euro semi-final. The Netherlands scored just after 7 minutes. Then Harry Kane pulled the side level with a penalty. England played well but couldn't break through until substitute Ollie Watkins won the game with a 91st minute goal. Southgate's men head to Berlin now for a showdown with Spain on Sunday. Garrett was delighted to see his team make history with their first foreign final.
It's another landmark, but the way that we played as well, we played so well throughout the game. It was a complicated game. They kept changing. We had to keep changing how we were defensively especially. I thought we caused them problems all night, and the end is so special for the squad. Even though new PM Sir Keir Starmer was in NATO meetings during the game, he managed to sneak out to watch Kane's penalty, and he's got his fingers crossed for Sunday's final, but wouldn't be drawn on whether or not we might be getting an extra bank holiday.
Well, we should certainly mark the occasion. I don't want to jinx it. I went to the last Euros finals. I don't want to go through that again. We must mark it in some way, but the most important thing is getting it over the line on Sunday.
One of the best things to come out of James Corden's departure from late night TV was the news that he and co-creator Ruth Jones had decided to give us one more episode of the iconic Gavin and Stacey. All we know so far is that the show will return for a Christmas Day special, but not even the BBC have seen the script yet. Rob Brydon is expected to return as Uncle Bryn, and Joanna Page, who plays Stacey, is also booked for a comeback, but she says she doesn't know much more than that yet.
I can't wait to find out what's happened, because I remember all those years ago reading the script, and then it says Nessa goes down on one knee and says, will you marry me? And I remember going on scrolling and going, what? That can't be the end. So I just hope that I haven't signed on to be running around on Barry Beach in a bikini, because I'm not doing that at the age of 47.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes and we'll give you the world.
Summer is always full of fun, and this summer FanDuel has something for every baseball fan every day to make it even funner. Is that a word? It is now. All customers get a boost or a bonus every day all summer long, only on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. 21 plus and present in Virginia. Opt-in required. Wager requirements apply. Bonuses awarded as non-withdrawable bonus bets or profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including bonus expiration. See terms and conditions at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.